In 1968, this guy called Paul Ehrlich wrote a book called The Population Bomb, where he said that in just 10 years there were going to be mass starvations and famines because people weren't going to have enough food because there were just going to be too many humans on Earth. And then in 2005, Al Gore predicted that in 2015 we were going to reach the point of no return on climate change. Obviously, neither of those predictions came true, and it turns out that a lot of expert predictions don't come true, right? Like if you ask a bunch of economists what they think is going to happen in the world, and then you compare that to what actually ends up happening, usually it's like worlds apart. That's something that political scientist Philip Tetlock figured out. He looked at a bunch of expert predictions, and he found out that they're actually about as accurate as a dart-throwing chimpanzee would be. So Philip Tetlock has spent his entire career trying to figure out how can we make better predictions. So he did a bunch of experiments trying to figure out, okay, what makes a good forecaster? And he put together a team of the best forecasters, the people who were best in his experiments at predicting political events, and he called them superforecasters, and he put them up against intelligence analysts, people from like the CIA and the NSA who are paid to predict stuff, and they like beat the crap out of them, right? The superforecasters blew the intelligence analysts out of the water. So what's superforecasters' secret? What's their special power? Well, it turns out that they just have a different style of thinking than most people. And in Philip Tetlock's book, Superforecasting, he talks about that thinking style. So how does a superforecaster think? And more importantly, how can you learn to think like a superforecaster? Well, that's what I'm going to go over in this video. In 1953, this guy, Isaiah Berlin, wrote an essay where he said there are two types of thinkers. There are hedgehogs who know one big thing, and then there are foxes who know many little things. And it turns out that foxes are way, way, way better at predicting stuff. So if you still don't understand the concept, basically a hedgehog has some grand theory of how the world works, and they see everything through the lens of that theory, right? So for example, a Marxist might see everything through the lens of class oppression, or a neoclassical economist might see everything through the lens of the invisible hand. Basically, they have one big paradigm, and they see everything through the lens of that one big paradigm. Whereas a fox can see a problem through many different lenses, right? A fox can say, what would a Marxist say about this? What would a neoclassical economist say about this? What would a Keynesian say about this? What would an anthropologist say about this? What would a historian say about this? Etc., etc. It turns out that the world's like way too complicated to see everything through one lens, right? Like if you just have one model of the world and it's like, oh, this is how the world works, then it's going to leave a lot of stuff out. There's going to be so much nuance that you just don't see. And so being able to kind of see problems in different perspectives helps you kind of overcome some of your blind spots, and it gets you closer to the actual truth. In fact, Philip Tetlock found that a lot of hedgehogs are actually worse than chance at predicting stuff, right? If they just threw darts at a board, then they would have more success. Another thing that Philip Tetlock noticed that pretty much every superforecaster did really well is they question their initial judgment, right? So the way the human brain normally works is we get a question and then an answer pops into our head and we say, okay, that's the answer, let's go for it. But superforecasters are more likely to question themselves, right? An answer pops in their head and they're like, where did that answer come from? And what evidence is there for that answer? And what would the world look like if that was the answer? And does the world actually look like that? Are there any better answers to this question, etc., etc.? The legendary psychologists Amos Tversky and Daniel Kahneman came up with a huge list of cognitive biases, which are basically just errors that people make when they think, and superforecasters are good at not making those errors. Kahneman and Tversky talk about the human mind as basically being split into two separate systems. So there's system one, which is your unconscious mind, and it runs in the background without you thinking about it. And anytime you get asked a question, your unconscious mind fires up with an answer. And sometimes it's not the right answer, that's the problem. So you have to use system 2, which is your conscious mind, to question that system 1 answer and figure out, okay, what's the right answer? And that doesn't come naturally to most people, right? Like most of the time we just kind of assume that our first instinct is right because that's the way that we evolved, and we can't do that. So superforecasters don't do that, and that's part of what makes them better at predicting stuff. In fact, being a good superforecaster means assuming that you're wrong from the get-go and then trying to prove yourself wrong and come up with a better answer. So thanks for checking out Pio's Book Club. If you like this video, then go ahead and like the video down there. You can hit subscribe if you want more of these videos to pop up in your feed. And until next time, question your first instinct, and have a great day.